there, grumpy old fart here. I'm doing an advanced Dungeons and Dragons advice video. It's actually for pretty much any tabletop role playing game, but I'm titling this one "Good Role Play." Before I get into this, though, if you enjoy my content, it would really help me out if you could hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, share my content on all of your social media platforms, and post a comment or two. Remember, I welcome your comments, even if you disagree with me. If you enjoy a good book, check out my author page on Amazon.com. My pen name is H.L. Anderson. You can find all of my books there, including the tabletop role-playing game, Outlaw Trails. I do a lot of videos about that on this channel. Check some of those out. Outlaw Trails is a tabletop role-playing game made for people who have varying degrees of experience in tabletop role-playing. Players who are familiar with the genre and know how to play tabletop role-playing games can take this book and play with it for years of really great fun in the Old West. Players who've never ever played before can pick it up, and within a couple hours they can be running games, not just playing, but running games. They can make up characters for their players and play with their family and friends. It's designed to be family friendly. So there you go. All right, good role play. Here we go. I started playing tabletop role playing games in 1976 with Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, Chainmail and then Dungeons and Dragons. I started running Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in 1979. I've been doing this a really long time. Lately, I have noticed a trend in the gaming community. I would love to say it is because of the introduction of the 5th edition rules, but maybe 4th edition or whatever, but that would be a lie. This trend started far, far earlier, sometime after 2nd edition came out. It was after 2nd edition became commonplace, to be honest. Now, I don't know if 2nd edition was the reason or not, but I know the trend predates 3.5. And I hate to say it, but I get into this rut too, so I'm not saying, oh, you guys suck. No, I do it too. It's a trend. It's all across the gaming community. Okay? So it's not, I do it too. So there you go. The trend I'm talking about is the lack of planning, common sense, and apprehension in any encounter. Oh, look, a monster. I roll to attack. There's no planning. There's no apprehension. No fear of death. No common sense. This has gotten steadily worse for years until what we have today is a monotonous humdrum of hack and slash and plotting plots. This video is not only for players, but it is also for game masters. So keep that in mind. A lot of this is the dungeon master's fault. If the story is not interactive enough and doesn't captivate the players with the interesting characters and the cinematic locations and challenging situations, not strictly combat, but intelligent problem solving. Helping find the lost kid, helping a town work through a legal dispute, something, anything. It doesn't all have to be combat. But if that stuff isn't going on, if these challenging situations are not being presented, then you can expect your players to become mindless murder hobos. That's how that works. That's how murder hobos are built. Some people come into the game as a murder hobo. I got a nephew like that. He's a good kid, but he came into D&D like a murder hobo. Okay? But murder hobos can be built, and this is how you build them. Not all of this is the Dungeon Master's fault. A lot of it comes from the game itself. 5th edition, for example, in my opinion, caters to children unwilling to read, think, and reason out situations. It's almost impossible to die in 5th edition, so there's no rush of adrenaline or sense of accomplishment. Also, 5th edition player characters start out as overpowered behemoths. There is no reason to adventure if you're already a superhero. In earlier, like for example, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you build your character. You don't start out as a hero, you become one. Okay? In 5th edition, you start out a badass, and there's no reason do anything. Just go get a job. Players who do not fear death and have superheroes as characters have no apprehension. They do not fear death. I realize I'm coming down really hard on 5th edition, but I'm just using it as an example. The same thing can be said about 3.5, and the same thing can happen with 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It's just much easier for this to happen with 5th edition. Okay? I played with a guy years ago. His name was Bill. Bill was... I've a number of different Bills, but this particular Bill is a real piece of crap. This guy ran what I call wild style Dungeons & Dragons, and this was where... instead of playing in a Tolkien-like atmosphere like Lord of the Rings, they had spaceships, they had starships, they had fleets, they had every character had a wish gem in their palm. They could wish for whatever they wanted. Blah 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 blah. If your game master's doing that, find a different fucking game. Okay, it's that simple. But that's what I'm talking about. If the character is overpowered, what's the point in playing? Okay, there has to be risk and reward. Otherwise, the game's not fun. There has to be that apprehension, that fear of death. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no adrenaline. There's no adrenaline rush. Okay? Now, all of that aside, here's the cure. As a dungeon master, every non-player character needs to be original and must be acted out. These are the non-player characters that the dungeon master uses to interact with the players in-game. Every villain needs to be spectacular and challenging. Every monster spectacular may not be the proper word. It has to be individual. Not so much original, but individual. Every monster needs to be fearsome and monstrous. Every location needs to be described with cinematic detail down to the sounds, sights, and smells. The more you put into the world, the more your players will get out of it. Don't be afraid to kill off player characters when necessary, but don't make it part of the agenda. All right? There's a difference between saying, all right, there's a forest, what are you going to do? All right. There's a difference between that and, well, it's a dark and foreboding place. There's trees, lots of trees, various types of trees, almost like they don't belong here. And there's a sense of dread coming from the forest. There's shadows where their shadows shouldn't be. The trees themselves seem to groan in the wind. You see the difference? One is interesting. One is, well, okay, there's trees. Next. The first one makes you want to chop the trees down. I mean, come on. The more you put into your world, and because it's your world and you're the one describing it to them, the more you put into your world, the more your players can get out of it. If you don't put anything into it, they can't get anything out of it. Okay? They're relying on you for description. As a player, if all you do is charge to attack, you're not role-playing. I've been guilty of this from time to time. I'm absolutely guilty of this. The gaming group I play in now, right now, we're playing in a campaign, and it's absolutely wonderful. Prior to that, we played in what are called one-shots. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's you make characters, you go a mission, and you're done. It's not an actual campaign. There is no reason in a one-shot to build your character other than to make him more deadly. You're there to kill things. That's what a one-shot is. Okay? I'm sorry, but that's the truth. As a player, if all you do is charge to attack in a campaign, then you're not role-playing. I've been guilty of this from time to time as well, and it's not hard to fall into this rut. What you need to do is take the time to talk to NPCs. The other day, our game master had to remind me, well, maybe you should go back and talk to that guy because, he may have some information you might need. That kind of thing. And I'm guilty of it, okay? Because he was talking to me. Find out more about the world in the game. Get a job between missions and try to impress your boss. Start a business so that you have income besides simple adventure. At some point, you might not be able to adventure anymore. Your character might not. He may want to retire. Add to the world rather than simply eliminating villains. If you're a good character, Adopt an orphanage. Okay? Establish a library. Build a bridge to aid the locals so they don't have to go 20 miles downstream to ford the river. Take up a hobby. Help a farmer to plant or harvest his crops, or dig irrigation ditches to help out the locals. Investigate a local legend, anything. Something that allows you to interact with the locals. Okay? If your player character is evil, case and rob a local mansion, a high-end store, or a temple, or something. Build a criminal organization. Build a coalition of criminal organizations. Organize a coup to install a leader more suitable to your alignment. I did an entire video on coups and rebellions. Check that out. Your alignment, the alignment of your character, doesn't necessarily determine what your character is going to do in the game. Now, if you're relying on the game master to provide every scrap of detail and every nuance of every aspect of every game session, yeah, you're riding him pretty fucking hard. That's all I'm saying. You are really riding that guy or the girl, and because there are girl dungeon masters. I'm not taking it away, but my contention is make the game fun. If you're not doing that, why are you showing up to play? Any of these things or similar activities, you can come up with other stuff on your own. And this is not a complete list for good or evil characters, by the way. Any of these things or similar activities will force your player character to interact with NPCs. That's called roleplay. This will, and you have to play your character as though it's the character. You can't just walk in, yeah, I'll do this. Okay. If your character's a barbarian, he doesn't know anything about magic, or at least he shouldn't. If your character is a dwarf, have him talk like a subterranean dweller. If he's an elf, he runs around in the woods. He knows the woods. Play the character. Not all elves are the same. Not all dwarves are the same. Elves and dwarves are quite different. I'm just saying. Play the character. It's called roleplay. This will counteract the hack and slash murder hobo mentality, and it will add depth and substance to your characters. Any dungeon master worth his salt will allow player characters to roleplay and interact with locals to their heart's content. There's always next game session to pick up where you need to. Okay? As a dungeon master, if the players are spending time doing these things, you have more time to flesh out your villains and their master plans. Now, there can be too much of this. If the villain's plot is progressing and the players are busy digging a ditch, irrigation ditch or whatever, the bad guy's plot continues. I've talked about this in other videos. Time marches on. So you might want to drop a few hints. The bad guy, this over here is happening. You might want to go do something, that kind of thing. Now, you can't tell you're the dungeon master. You can't tell your players what to do, but you can drop hints. When they see the major villain's army has suddenly grown to behemoth size, monstrous size, then yeah, maybe they've waited too long. A little too much roleplay, I guess. But the point is, having the player characters interact with locals in-game builds roleplay. It builds those characters. It adds depth and meaning to what they're doing. Okay? Keep in mind, this advice is transferable to any tabletop role-playing game. It's not only for Dungeons & Dragons. And I hope this helps. If a player only wants to be the murder hobo, then there are tons of ways to deal with them. I talk about them in some other videos. I think it's more appropriate to show them a better way. Roleplay should be that way. Good roleplay is the cure for droll murder hobo mentality. Again, I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm just trying to make I've been doing this a long time. I'm trying to make your gaming experience more enjoyable. Trying to help you have more fun, and that's the whole ultimate goal of these games, is to have fun. So I hope this fun. Feel free to use, abuse, ignore, or change what I say. I hope this finds everybody well. And if anybody else has any more comments or any other advice, stick it in the comment section, because everybody would love to read them. That's what these videos are for, is to help the younger gamers. Hope this finds everybody well. You folks have a good one. God bless one and all.